Hi! So before we start, let's get one thing straight. VTuber agencies are scams. Hi! I'm Wisty, and I do commentary videos about topics related to the art community, the VTuber fandom, tech, and games. Today, I want to briefly touch on the transpirings of Selene Tatsuki, also known as Doki Bird, and how horribly she was treated by her agency. At the end of this, I hope you'll come away with some changed perspectives. So, what happened to Doki Bird? Well, for legal reasons, all of the following is based on evidence that either Doki or Nijisanji themselves have posted. And much of it is alleged, but, well, after a long chain of being constantly railroaded by her management into not being allowed to do various projects, such as a Fall Guys tournament, or having to pay her artists out of her own pocket because management either refused to pay them or neglected to do so, something she was apparently reprimanded for, as that is against the rules. So, tangent, but good job there, Niji. Really making it so I'll never take a job from your talents, no matter how much I like them. Selene had finally had enough. She'd done her manager's job for them by securing all relevant permissions and copyrights written down and forwarded to her management, despite what they're claiming, to do a cover song. That song was taken down and privated by the company, claiming that she hadn't gone through the proper channels. So she just encouraged the community to re-upload it, which also wasn't allowed. This, among other things, including bullying within the company that Nijisanji has admitted to in their announcement, resulted in, well, to put it in ways that YouTube will allow, because I'm not allowed to talk about this frankly, resulted in her attempting to remove herself from this earth. After that, Nijisanji allegedly harassed both her and her emergency contact while she was still in the hospital to post apology tweets. If that wasn't somehow bad enough, they then locked her out of all of her accounts when she didn't do this quickly enough for their liking and forced her into silence for over a month. Now she's being terminated, which is all being blamed on her, despite the fact that her story corroborates that of many other former talents within Nijisanji on mismanagement, and she has returned to her old persona, which is Doki Bird. That's the short of it. If you want to do a deep dive into the situation, you can visit literally any of the VTuber tabloid channels, or check out Ilara, who I find has the best breakdown of this notice and points out all of the self-contradictions on part of Nijisanji. Now that that's out of the way, I want to tell you why Doki's situation is not unique. Not in a vacuum, and more likely than not to happen to you upon joining an agency. You do not need an agency. In almost every case, you are better off staying indie in nearly every way except growth, and I have the resources and the facts to back up this claim. Much of this information comes from the more established models of animation and book publishing, but they apply quite aptly to VTubers as well. I was talking to a good friend of mine. Her name is Galatunia, and you can find her channel linked below. She does videos on designing and decorating houses in video games like Final Fantasy XIV. Galatunia is involved in authorship circles, particularly in publishing, and she really knows her stuff. The fact that she was able to quickly relate the situation in publishing to that of VTubing really makes me feel confident in the comparison. So, how are VTuber agencies like traditional publishing houses, and what do they give you? In truth, very much like them, and they don't give you much, respectively. When recruited into a publishing agency, an author is meant to be paid in advance when they sell their book to the publisher, and then they're promised royalties at a set rate once the book outsells their advance. The example given by Galatunia was, if you were paid 12 grand for a book, your book has to earn the publishing house 12 grand before you can start earning royalties. In the news, you'll see big, six-figure advances very often, but the vast majority of authors are paid $7,000 or less. The mean appears to be somewhere around $5,000. The SWFA did a deep dive on this, which you can find linked below. All the resources for this video are linked below, so please read the articles. Secondly, publishing houses do not pay your entire advance up front. They're broken up into parts. So, you were promised $5,000 for your book, and advances are usually paid at half at the start, and half when published. So you're looking at least a year, usually 2, before you get the other half of your money. But what about royalties? According to SFWA, 2/3 of all authors never earn out their advances. So let's say your $10 paperback book outsells the advance and you start making royalties. How much do you actually make? You get 50 cents of that sale. 50 cents. The publishing house keeps the rest. But that's not the end of it, because your agent also has to be paid, and so they take part of your cut, not the house's cut. And because authors are also considered independent contractors, you now owe 30% of that 50% to the government if you're in the US. So can you see the similarities to VTuber agencies yet? Typically, when you sign on to a VTuber agency, you'll be given a budget for your debut. Sometimes you won't. Most of them do have this. Usually the model is already created, so you have nearly zero input on what you get, although you may be able to pick one out of a lineup they have on the back burner. You'll probably be asked a few questions about what kind of character or persona you like to portray, and then are given options that fit that. That's about all of the choices that you get in an agency, if you get one. According to certain anonymous folks I've spoken to who have graduated from them, I won't name them because most of them are still under NDA. So, once you debut, you have to pay your agency back the money you spent on getting you ready for your debut. Some agencies, such as allegedly Nijisanji, actually don't give you a budget and instead just make you pay out of your own pocket for everything. If you're paying out of your own pocket anyway, what's the point? Really, what do you get? The paying the agency back, by the way, is usually done by them withholding some or all of your streaming revenue on top of the originally agreed upon split until your channel starts making a profit past the advance. You have to be prepared to have no income for at least a few months between debut and when your advance is paid off. But the agencies also make merch, so surely you're going to get a piece of that pie, right? In the form of royalties? Well, as it turns out, not so much. Using Nijisanji as an example again, former talents have cited that they just receive 1% of the revenue from merch sales, and a little bit more from the voice packs. As an indie, after your artists and your producers are paid, the rest is profit aside from taxes. It's all yours. Marketing is a myth. In both VTuber agencies and traditional publishing, they do in fact want you to succeed, because if you succeed, they make the money. According to Galatunia, publishing houses work by buying a lot of manuscripts, but they'll typically just have 1 or 2 favorites that they'll push everywhere. If your advance is less than 5 digits, you're not likely to be promoted at all. You're too niche. You have to be your own agent, social media manager, advertiser, graphic designer, promoter, everything. You have to do the book tours all out of your own pocket. With publishing houses now pushing authors to become influencers before ever even trying to publish any book at all. One example who is very transparent about this is Nijisanji Zhao on TikTok. They were depending on YouTube and Patreon, despite the fact that their book is, as of writing, still a New York Times bestseller. And they're not the only one. Stephen King even came out during the Penguin Random House trial about many of these issues against the authors. So, in short, a publishing house is only really good for 2 things: connections and getting the books into physical stores. Both of these are great and very essential, but there are other ways to do it. publishing houses will also frequently throw their authors under the bus. They decide if they succeed or die. For example, Neil Gaiman, and again, Zerande Zhao, as mentioned above, had their nominations revoked for the Hugo Awards for voicing support for Palestine. Yeah. They're that powerful. They decide whether you live or die. Now, let's look at VTuber agencies. The reason that agencies most frequently debut their talents in waves of as few as 3 and as high as 10 or 15 is for the same reason that K-pop bands are so big. Chances are, by giving you, the viewer, so much variety, odds are you're going to like and throw your money at least one. Usually these agencies already know who their golden geese are likely to be, as they'll have the biggest following coming over from their past lives. The agencies will promote the absolute shit out of these talents in particular. The favoritism isn't always easy to spot, but it's always there. Even then, the favoritism in a VTuber agency may not even help you. For example, for a certain time, Uhura Rushia was Hololive's highest earner, and they terminated her. For good reasons, mind, but they still terminated her. Coco Kiryu did nothing wrong other than reading out her YouTube stats as they were shown by YouTube, and Cover Corp dropped her like a hot potato after some drama. Selene was the darling of Nijisanji En, often described as completely unhateable even by drama channels, and Nijisanji turned on her. Zion Lanza wasn't in Nijisanji for long, and she did royally fuck up on a few occasions, I will say that, but the disregard Nijisanji showed her in her own allegations, if true, just goes to show that for as little as they do for their darlings, they'll do even less for the average debut. No matter how much money you make for them, they can still decide whether you succeed or lose out. You may have to go months without income just for one minor infraction. So, what are you losing and gaining by joining an agency? Well, you lose revenue, because now you have to give some to not just your platform, but the company. You lose all potential to make money off of merch sales, and if you lose, ironically, agency to do as you please, within the bounds of the law. You are controlled every minute, from what you can say to what you can stream, and you can't speak up for yourself. That'll get you fired and possibly sued. And when you are eventually kicked to the curb, companies have a vested legal interest in slandering you and turning your audience against you as much as they possibly can, because they don't want your audience to follow you. They want your audience to filter into their other talents. But what do you gain from joining an agency? Well, much like a publishing house when it comes down to it, a VTuber agency is really only good for two things: connections and instant access to an audience. Sometimes you may luck out and get some decent management, but that seems to be rare. Both of these are great, and there's other ways to do it. Honestly, my advice is, going forward, this is just my own personal observation, but a lot of indie VTubers view agencies as the only road to success, unless you're winning the lottery level lucky and just happen to get picked up by the algorithm. I don't believe this is the case, and once again, I have sources and stats to back it up. You really do not need hundreds of thousands or even millions of subs to make a living off of being a VTuber. In fact, the actual number is far, far less than that. All you need is 1,000 true fans, according to an essay linked below on the Technium, which was originally written in 2008. This has, in fact, mostly stayed true since then. The report, to summarize, says that all you really need if you're not pursuing superstardom, but rather a comfortable living, is 1,000 very devoted fans who will buy anything you make, whether that be merch, voice packs, CDs, DVD specials, or sponsored promotions. With these 1,000 superfans, you have a whole host of other fans who will also pay you for what you're doing, allowing you to live a comfortable, albeit not glamorous life with a bit of frugality. This is echoed in Linktree's 2022 report. 6% of all beginner creators made more than 10 grand in 2022. That percentage may look low, but the actual numbers show something interesting. There were roughly 23 million creators in that category that year, meaning that those with 1,000 subscriptions or less. 6% of 23 million is 1.32 million. For comparison, Amazon has an estimated 1.6 million employees under their name. Now, 10 grand a year may not by any means be a living wage, and it is hella difficult to get to that point in the first place. Trust me, I know. But context is very much key for percentages. Over 1 million people made 10,000 despite having 1,000 subs or less. That isn't even accounting for the other potential revenue streams, such as freelancing, merch sales, sponsorships, and affiliate programs. I wish more VTubers would realize that they don't have to, and they shouldn't, rely purely on Twitch or YouTube videos or streams. There's a lot of ways to make money out there, and not searching for other niches in the market while building your audience organically is a big failing. But the fact is, in an agency, you wouldn't even be allowed to look into these other revenue streams. All of that, all of you, all that you are, right down to your identity as a creator, belongs to them. And if you leave, you don't get to keep any of it. You'd be lucky if a fraction of your audience even manages to find and follow you again on any new or returning persona, should your time in an agency not work out. Epidemic Sound, which is the most popular YouTube music paid resource, put out a 2023 report that breaks down common monetization streams for your perusal. The link for that is also below. It might help you out. The truth is, with an agency, you're still going to be doing the lion's share of the work. You still have to make your own graphics, find your own artists, put together your own materials, and do the annoying task of dealing with management who wants your leash as tight as possible. In addition, and I did not script this part, but I just thought of it, most people are not ready for the kind of fame that comes with an agency. Say you had 10,000 followers before you were recruited into an agency, and now you suddenly have 25,000, 30,000, 100,000. Be ready for the paparazzi? I know you're not. Most of them do not handle it very well. Anyway, with all that being said, are there any benefits at all to joining an agency whatsoever? Well, yes, in fact, but they're nothing you can't do by yourself. I would caution any creator against joining an agency wholesale, but I do know that the prestige of one can be attractive for some people. So I'll tell you what I would do if I was faced with that situation. Say, if somebody wanted to recruit me. Obviously, the first thing you should be doing is reading your contracts and hiring a lawyer to look over them. Some agencies have been known to sneak in clauses that would be either impossible to enforce or are outright illegal. You want to know what you're getting into, know exactly what your advance is going to be for your debut, what your revenue split is, and what you'll be getting from side sales like merchandise and sponsorships. You can negotiate these things, and you should negotiate them. Do not accept that, well, it's this or nothing. If they try to pull that, reject them. Secondly, don't hinge everything on an agency. If I were to spend any time in an agency, it would be for my benefit. I don't care about the company. Do your 1 year or 2 years, whatever your contract is, and then leave. Take whatever audience you can retain from that time in your new or resurging persona. Remember, the 1,000 true fans rule. This is, I believe, the only true benefit that an agency can offer you. Finding your true fans who are there for you and not the company. Even this is risky though, as the agencies typically will fight you every step of the way to disallow you to disclose who you are and where you're going. You might even be forced to sign a non-compete, which means that you wouldn't be able to even be a VTuber for a set number of years. Either way, the decision ultimately falls to you. I want everyone to view this recent situation with Doki as a cautionary tale, and don't be caught up in the prestige that comes with being connected to a brand or a talent agency. While they may not have been our first exposure, while they may have been our first exposure to VTubers, especially in the Western sphere, they are not the end-all be-all. You are enough on your own. But, well, hey there. So, that was the video. I kind of typed all of that up last night in a cold sweat at like 3 o'clock in the morning. So if it was a little bit rambly, I'm sorry. Also, if I sound a little bit stuffy, that's because I am. So, sorry about that. Sorry my dog is making some noise in the background as well. If you enjoyed that, please consider leaving a like or a subscribe. It really helps me out, and I hope you learned something. Maybe it changed your perspective a little bit. Bye for now.